Welcome to today's IG Live. Today I will be covering how to use a scallop lace for the Maris bralette. If you have been sewing bras, you're a bra maker, you've been shopping for laces, you have probably gathered up or collected or have a large stash of stretch galloon laces. And a lot of the Madalynne patterns use all over lace and stretch mesh. The Bralette does, the Noel panty does, the Maris bralette. But if you've built up this stash and you're like, well, how can I use this stretch galloon? First of all, can I use this stretch galloon lace? And secondly, how do I use it? Are there any pattern alterations or sewing alterations that I need to make? What I love about this change from the Maris, I love the Maris, but it does have like a sporty femme look. So using this stretch galloon lace on the Maris bralette kind of gives it a more feminine vibe to it, which I love. And this actually has a very Dora Larson vibe with the color blocking here, which is great. So I'm gonna walk you through the pattern alterations. Even if you don't like pattern alterations, they're super easy, as well as the sewing alterations as well. Or not alterations, but changes to the instructions of the pattern. It's only one. Something to note is that I am using a stretch galloon lace. Because the Maris pattern was developed for stretch fabrics, that's why I'm using a stretch galloon lace. You can use a non-stretch lace. If you're a bra maker, you probably have a non-stretch lace in your stash. That's kind of like a whole separate tutorial, but just keep in mind that if you use a non-stretch lace for this, you will probably have to go up a size to account for the non-stretch. So I have three scenes for you. One is right now, teaching. We're gonna switch over to a look down. I'm gonna show you the pattern alteration. I'm gonna show you how to cut your pattern as well. And then we're gonna go over the sewing station, whatever. And I'll show you the sewing steps. Okay, so let's get started. I'm gonna first start on the bralette and how to cut the pattern alteration, how to cut your pattern. The upper bralette triangle cup is already cut out, as well as the back band, because there is no pattern alteration for that. So I have those already cut out. So let's go over the only pattern alteration, which is to the bralette cups, the side bralette cup, as well as the center front bralette cup. And you almost don't need this pattern alteration, but just for, there's a slight curve on the side cup of the Maris bralette. So what we're gonna do is we are just going to straighten that out. See how slight that is? If you don't wanna, if you have your pattern already cut out, you've made a Maris, and you like making it per the instructions, and then you're gonna try the Maris bralette with scallop lace, you technically, and you don't wanna, cut into your pattern, you don't have to do this, but if you want to make another copy of it and have this be your stretch galloon lace Maris, all you're gonna do is you're gonna chop off that little bit right there so that the upper edge of the Maris bralette side cup is a straight line. And then you're gonna do the same thing, which again, it's pretty much a straight line, but I'm just gonna make it even straight. It's like there's like a slight curve. I'm just gonna make it slightly straighter, just super straight. So this is the edges where the scallop lace is going to go. And that's the pattern alteration. I told you, if you don't like pattern alterations, you can definitely do that. Okay, so how we've done the pattern alteration, how in the world do we cut it out? So I have the stretch galloon lace. This comes in the newest kit, as well as the stretch mesh. What you're going to do is, this gets a little meticulous, but I'm gonna cut off a small section of this. Following the direction of greatest stretch, making sure those are matched up. And I'm using a size extra small just so all the pattern pieces fit on camera. That's pretty much the only reason why. Okay, so what you want to do, let's tackle the side cup first. So this stretch galloon lace, the upper edge is going to be on the scallop, the high point of the scallop. So in a lace, there is a high point and then there is a low point. So you want the straight edge of the side cup to be hitting the high point of the scallop. Now another thing to think about is that there is a seam line. And it's 1/4 of an inch and I'm just eyeballing this, it's not exact. And when you sew the side cup and the center front together, you want the patterns on the lace to somewhat match. I think the most important thing is that if this is at one of the highest points of the scallop, because the scallop has a curve, so it just has to be, it doesn't have to be at the top point, but you want to make sure that if this is at the if the seam line is at the highest point of the scallop on the side cup, that it's also the same for the seam line on the center front cup. And I'm saying seam line because that's where you sew it. So it's not the edge of the pattern, it's actually 1/4 of an inch inside. So I am going to cut this out. I'm going to leave this stretch mesh on the upper edge, just as is. Okay, so I've cut that out. And I'm going to use my Otis 505 spray adhesive to spray base these. I'm going to do the lower portion. Just give it like a couple sprays. Okay. Oh. Okay, now I'm going to peel this back just a bit, and I'm going to take this temporary marker, and I'm going to place a couple of dots, and I'm going to follow just inside the scalloped edge. If you see, if I pull that back, you can see my little dots that are going along the scallop edge. And this is where you can take a pair of scissors if you think it's better, because they have to come to a point, and coming to a point with a rotary cutter is not easy. And then you're going to trim just inside those little dots. I'm going to fold that back. And then as you can see, the stretch mesh is just inside the scallops, along the scallops. Okay, so now I'm going to do that same thing to the center front cup. Again, making sure that the seam line is hitting the high point of the scallop. I'm going to peel this back. I'm going to mark little dots along the edge of this scallop lace. And I'm just kind of eyeballing it. Okay, so I cut out the side cup and the center front cup. Now let's move on to the panty. Panty's really easy. Let's use our stretch mesh. So the first thing that I'm going to do is cut out the center front panty panel out of stretch mesh. I'm going to put these aside so that I don't cut into them. Okay, so there's my center front panty panel all cut out. So I'm gonna lay one layer of Otis 505. Pick it up so it doesn't stick to the cutting mat. Then I'm going to lay this over. And I'm gonna have the scallop portion of the lace just above the panty panel, the top of the panty panel. And then on this bottom portion, you still have to cover this. So I'm going to lay this over, having the motifs match. And then the last step is I'll show you a little trick or way to cut out the crotch lining or the gusset. There is a pattern piece for this, but what I like to do is I like to fold it back. Fold it down. And that's it. Usually this distance, the size of the gusset is about 4 inches. Okay, so I have all of that cut out. Now let's go over to the sewing station, and I will show you how to sew all of this together. Okay, so the first step, which I've already done, because it's super easy, is I've sewn the side front and the center front cup together. And I have used a straight stitch, and then I serged the seams. You don't have to serge the seams, it's optional, but if you do, it does give a little bit of a nicer finish. I made sure that at the top, the upper edge of the bralette cup, that the patterns were matching. So now, in order to attach this, I also left a little bit of the tail for my serger. I like to wrap that around and finish it off or enclose it in this seam so the threads don't stick out. So in order to attach the lower bralette cup to the upper bralette cup, you are gonna lay it over about, you want to make sure that the low point of the scallop is overlapping the bottom of the upper cup about 1/4 of an inch. And then I'm going to pin it. Trying to use my hands in a way so I'm not blocking it. And if you have a little bit of a tail at the end, that is okay. Okay, so I have it pinned. Now I'm going to use a zigzag stitch, regular stitch length. It's going to vary from machine to machine. On my machine it's 2.0, 2.0, and I'm going to go along the edges. And as I get to one point, the low point of the scallop, I'm going to put my needle down and I'm going to pivot and then go along the other top edge. And then I'm going to go down to the other low point of the scallop, and then I'll pivot and then go along the other top edge of the scallop. Also, I am using a blue thread for the top to match the blue lace, and then a white thread to match the cream stretch mesh underneath. Needle down, pivot, go all the way around again. clip my thread tails. I'm going to clip these little thread from my serger. And the last step is, well, first I'm going to clip off that little tail. The last step is that you can see my stitches go all the way along the edge of the scallop lace. Now I'm going to take I can take clippers, I can take my duck-billed scissors, and I'm going to trim off super close to that zigzag stitch. Ta-da! All nice and neat on the inside. Looks super pretty on the outside. And then you just proceed with the directions as normal. You'll finish the neckline and armhole edges with fold over elastic and then proceed with the bralette per the instructions. Okay, so now let's go on the panty. The panty is super easy. So all you do is the same thing. It's a little bit easier since it's not really a curved edge. But essentially you are going to sew along this scallop edge of the lace. I'm also going to do another stitch just above it to sew down the gusset. Okay, and that's it. So you can see on the inside that there's a zigzag stitch that goes along the scallop edge. I also did a zigzag stitch on the top of the gusset just to hold it down. And then you proceed with the directions, and that's it. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. It made a lot of sense, made it super easy, even if it seemed challenging. And thanks again.